Welcome to the Solutions Manual podcast. And we're joined tonight by Dr. Yi Song. Welcome.
Very happy to be here.
Can you introduce yourself to our audience and then we'll dive in?
Sure. I came from China. I grew up in Beijing, China, and I came to United States to study pathology at Brown University back almost 30 years ago. And then I became disenchanted with the approaches in pathology and general Western medicine. The philosophical approach in Western medicine is only treating symptoms and also only react to the symptoms. They wait until the symptoms are really bad to give people medication, surgery, now really emphasize early prevention. So that's how I began to trace back to my family root of 17 generations practicing Chinese medicine. And I started my Chinese medicine practice in Boston 20 years ago. And during that process, I realized actually there are a lot of powerful approaches in Chinese medicine, but it also has limitations. So one of the limitations showed up for my own mother about 5 years ago. And that's when I was introduced into stem cell in Colombia, because I already had a place in Colombia 3 years before that. And they just told me, oh, we could use this umbilical cord stem cells to treat a lot of conditions that neither Western medicine nor other alternative treatments have solutions for. So I was intrigued by it, and I used my mom as a guinea pig for the first treatment, and it worked as a wonder. So that's when I started studying more about stem cell treatment, because before that, I really had no idea about all those things. But because I was doing research in cell in molecular biology, so I did understand these things, but I just never thought about, oh, stem cells can be used in clinical treatment. So after that, I started offering stem cell treatment to people who are seeking help because they already ran out of solutions. For a lot of them, they also saw very good results, clinical results with the stem cell treatment. So I know stem cells are very controversial and there are bad actors in the field. So that's why people can hear a lot of bad things about it. And on the other hand, there are also good sides about it. So everything has two sides. So that's why we're here to talk about it, so that people can educate themselves and understand how to discern what kind of place you should seek treatment for, what place you should avoid, right?
Okay. Okay, great. So I think when we come to stem cells, because I came across the stem cells for the first time very early on as a concept when I was still training in medicine. And we had this distinction very early on between hematopoietic stem cells transplant from the blood taken from the cord. And then there was this hyped up group of mesenchymal stem cells from the cord tissue, right? I think they called it a jelly tissue, or the Wharton's jelly. The Wharton's jelly, there you go, that's it. Okay, so what can you tell us about this? Let's use this as a starting point.
So there are actually 4 different kinds of stem cells. So hematopoietic stem cells have been studied for a much longer period of time than mesenchymal stem cells. And they are actually approved to use in treating leukemia, lymphoma, any blood-related cancers, this type of thing, because they're related to the stem cells in your bone marrow, hematopoietic stem cells in your bone marrow that are malfunctioning. That's why you have these conditions, right? So the Wharton's jelly stem cells, they are actually called multipotent. They are not pluripotent. So that's the difference between mesenchymal stem cells and other types of stem cells like embryonic stem cells or hematopoietic stem cells, or even induced pluripotent stem cells. Because they can only differentiate into limited lineage cells, like different types of cells like bone, cartilage, neuron, or skin endothelial cells, these type of cells. But they can now differentiate it into, say, a whole heart organ or something like that, because they are now pluripotent. So because of that, actually mesenchymal stem cells, they are not tumorigenic. Because all the cases reported saying people after they got stem cell treatment, then they develop teratoma or tumor down the road 3 years later, and they
Yes,
found
which was
that
the
was
early
from
experience. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So those actually, all those cases, they did not use mesenchymal stem cells, or they did not use, say, 99.9% mesenchymal stem cells. A lot of them, they use embryonic or fetal neuron stem cells. So that's why those cells, they are pluripotent and they can develop into tumor.
Okay. So that's because that's an important distinction. And as you said, yes, the stem cells derived from umbilical blood at the beginning, they were used for treating mostly of the blood cancers, or as you mentioned, the leukemias, the MDS, and I think sickle cell was also attempted, if I remember correctly. But at some point, someone noticed that there's more to it than meets the eye, because there were some reports quite a while ago on the combined immunodeficiency syndrome of the SCID and other primary immunodeficiencies. And I came across this for the first time in vaccines research when people were looking at the function of the immune system, and also in some inherited metabolic conditions. And that's where it gave later rise, which this is the moment where my education ends when it comes to the category 2, right? The cell-derived treatments for, I think somebody investigated them from graft versus host disease or something similar for people undergoing transplants with relatively good results, and then tried to do this in diabetes. But I have absolutely no idea how that happened or what happened later in research, because I haven't been following it. So the potential was there. The teething problems at the beginning, as you mentioned, the teratogenic potential was there, and that where people were worried about. But what are the conditions today that we can reliably say that we can manage with stem cell-based therapies?
So right now, the best therapeutic effects we can achieve are for osteoarthritis, sports injury, or any joint, tendon, connective tissue related conditions, or any conditions related to circulation, neuropathy, peripheral nerve problem, or spinal conditions, a lot of disc problem, degenerative disc problem, stenosis. So these conditions, actually, I would say 70% of people looking for stem cells, they have pain. And they have gone through steroid injection, even surgery. And some of them maybe already had one joint replaced, like knee or shoulder or hip. And then they had terrible experience and they didn't want to do the second joint replacement. So, and then also for like athletes, they want to have top performance. They want to be able to compete, to go back to competition fast with recovery from injuries. And that's when stem cells really shines over any other treatments. Because, for example, for most athletes, if they just go conventional treatment for the injuries, they would have steroid injection first. And that only masks the symptoms, right? It doesn't really solve
exactly. That just solves the inflammation, right? If
exactly.
Yes, that's right.
And for them to go through surgery, they usually have to have 3 to 6 months recovery time, which means they have to miss a lot of training and competition. But if you do stem cells, most time you can back to competing or doing your regular routine within 1 to 2 months. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you also mentioned graft versus host disease.
Yes.
So stem cells, they really modulate the immune system. The detailed mechanism, how they modulate immune system, we understand a little bit, like they interact with the T cells, T helper cells, they release different cytokines or different cell signaling molecules for our immune system. But how it exactly modulates your immune system is not understood very well.
Fully.
But because we know it modulates immune system, and even from earlier days, they were using to treat graft versus host disease in organ transplant, and those patients, they already failed the immunosuppressive drugs. So in that kind of case, they use this mesenchymal stem cells. it can help them reduce the rejection of the organ transplanted. So that's why it really modulates the immune system so that the immune system is not overreacting, right?
Yes.
So it helps a lot of autoimmune conditions.
I think this is very fascinating because this is one of those examples where we have learned about treatments being beneficial or having positive outcomes without fully understanding its mechanism or without fully understanding what is going on. I think for the graft versus host disease, I think in Japan, I think in South Korea as well, there are approved and regulated products available derived from stem cells used for management of that disease, but not in the UK, not in the US, right? In many countries,
in the US, graft versus host is approved.
Is now approved? Okay, so that must have,
approved.
Yes. I only knew about the approvals in South Korea or Japan, but that's a great example.
In South Korea, mostly they were only approved for stem cell injection for knee or joint osteoarthritis. And for Japan, what they approved, I'm not exactly sure.
Why they are making relatively slow entrance, let's say, or into because let's be honest, when you have osteoarthritis or a hip problem or a knee problem, there's not really that much that you can reliably do to help, as you said, trying to manage the symptoms, right? Using painkillers, using anti-inflammation, or putting people through surgery, which is, again, often irreversible. Outcomes are questionable, especially when it comes to long-term effects. A lot of people never come back to the full function, or with sports, it's even lower amount of people going fully back into doing sports. And then there isn't therapy that seems to be effective. They're approved in many countries. Why is it still a topic that people don't really talk about? Or where's the resistance coming from?
So I think the resistance mostly came from pharmaceutical companies because if you think about it, the steroid injection or even joint replacement, that's a big industry, right? Let's say even half of the people who are needing joint replacement today, they instead do stem cell treatment and they don't do a joint replacement for the next 10 years. That's a huge amount of loss for the industry.
Oh, yeah, because otherwise symptoms you need to manage on an ongoing basis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, pharmaceutical companies, they're more interested in developing, say, induced pluripotent stem cells in the lab. Then
yes,
in that
there's a
way,
lot of research in that space.
It's something that they can patent. And then they can make profit out of it. Of course, initially they have to invest a lot of money, millions of dollars to do the research, right? But for this type of mesenchymal stem cells, you just isolate from the umbilical cord. It's relatively easy and simple procedure. And there's nothing for them to patent there because it's not even a single lineage of cells. It actually has at least 3 subpopulations. It's a heterogeneous composition of different type of mesenchymal stem cells in there. So it's a little bit more like traditional Chinese medicine, like we use herbs, all these different things that come from nature, and we don't really isolate one single ingredient out of it, but it has so many things, and maybe we don't even fully understand the whole ingredients in them.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what attracts me more, because it is more like a wholesome, natural ingredient you use to help your body heal.
Sometimes it's from your own body as well, because I know that there are countries that take or offer taking and freezing your own mother's umbilical cord when you are born, and you can keep that repository frozen for very little cost. It costs $10 a month, or it just the price is negligible.
No, I think it's $200 a month, something like that.
Oh, is it now?
They do that. Yeah.
In the US?
They do that in the US. Actually, some of my patients, when they deliver their baby, they did that, stored it. You either pay like one-time fee of $5,000 or you pay.
I remember that. I know that my children, when my son was born, he was born in Poland. I have paid the equivalent of $12 a month for the first 18 years of his life. So that's
So
a
you
bargain.
did save his umbilical cord.
Yes, and that was at the time where it was only emerging research. So we didn't know about people were saying, 20 years ago, oh, yes, maybe leukemias, maybe those types of diseases that we're now struggling with treating. Yes, we can still use a bone marrow, but the cost was relatively low, and there was absolutely no reason not to do this. And a lot of the treatments that you're mentioning right now were hypothetical. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, because you're right, you can use your own cells taken at birth if you were lucky enough to have it frozen, but it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be around in order for the treatment to be effective.
Right. So that's the difference in
Yeah.
mesenchymal stem cells from hematopoietic. Because if you want to treat somebody with leukemia or blood cancer, then you have to use the hematopoietic stem cells
Yes.
that actually somehow match their body's HLA type, all these things, so that they don't reject these cells. But for mesenchymal stem cells, they lack HLA receptor on their cells. So that's why they don't actually trigger the immune rejection when they're entering the recipient body, even though it's from a donor that doesn't really match the phenotype, all these things. And as long as that's why, the mesenchymal stem cells, they also modulate the immune system. So that means they actually can make overactive immune system not overacting inside your body to attack your own body tissue.
Yeah.
And if your immune system is weak, somehow they can also make your immune system function better. Of course, it's all theories, right? Or like, not having tons of clinical evidence, but some.
Yes. Yes, not at the moment, but I think the research in immune-related conditions is relatively new. I remember when I worked again in drug development, there was with lupus, there were trials of stem cells of MSC therapy coming mostly from China. I remember the results being mixed, but depending on the design, but there was definitely subsets of populations where those types of therapies were becoming useful. But you mentioned at the beginning that there's been some controversies as well. And I think that that's because there was, I think, a lot of bad faith or bad claims made by certain people in a space. I remember there was a huge boom from this anti-aging community that was one, and again, results were very mixed. But I've seen people, I would say inappropriately, trying to convince that you can cure autism or Parkinson's disease with stem cells. Do you think that is this still the case? I mean, people trying to pretend that this is for everything and for everyone?
I actually have a lot of people calling me about Parkinson's or their kids' autism. And I have heard or seen other people telling me after somebody they know got mesenchymal stem cell infusion, and their autistic symptoms dramatically reduced. So I've heard about that before, but I also treated one or two cases. But doesn't matter whether it's Parkinson's or autism or any other kind of autoimmune conditions, you actually need to do the treatments like more concentrated treatment within the first 6 months to a year to see the dramatic effects. Maybe one or two cases it works like magic, but for most people, it's not like a magic bullet that can cure everything. It's more like, Parkinson's. Some people think Parkinson's is also caused by some sort of autoimmune reaction in your brain. And in autism, people think it's also related to autoimmune. So most times they think, or they see some treatment results in these kind of conditions. I think it's all related to regulating the immune system.
Yeah, and we do know from cognitive neuroscience that there are different types of Parkinson and various other signatures cognitively, and therefore different biomarkers or interactions with different parts of the brain or even the immune system or the lymphatic system that probably impacts the manifestation of these diseases in a way that is no longer just classical definition. So that's interesting.
It has some effect, but I never tell people it's a magic fix.
No.
And sometimes some people calling me, they are really looking for magic bullets for their health problem.
Yeah.
And again, this is not something like, for me, myself, I'm interested in doing this for my own health and longevity as well. So I've done this maybe more than 30 times myself since 5 years ago,
Yeah.
because I do feel it has anti-aging effects. And I feel this is something that's really treating the root cause of the aging instead of taking 1,000 supplements or different things. I actually recently wrote a book called Six Principles to Natural Longevity. And the six principles are based on ancient practices in health and longevity. But then I also combine it with the modern technologies, including stem cell treatment. But I also combine red light therapy, sleep, how you manage your own mental well-being. All these things, you have to combine them together. It's not like you just have one
Yes.
stem cell treatment, then you are all of a sudden 20 years younger, or all your chronic disease are gone. It doesn't work that way,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes. And I think you need to get your basics right first as well. I think you've mentioned sleep, for example. If you don't sleep and eat right, then trying to pharmaceutically or using supplements, close to 5%, it just doesn't make sense because you're missing the most important foundation that allows optimization later in the first place. So, how did you come across the principles of those lifestyle-based interventions? Because my journey here starts approximately 20 years ago, like year 2004, I think, probably. I was a practicing physician back then. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And one of the first lectures that started with the words that it's interesting how people who walk 10,000 steps, do some sort of a 30-minute of weightlifting 3 times a week, think that they are physically active because that's just doing bare minimum. And that gives them permission to brag about how fit they are or eat anything they want. And that was this introduction to it. And I remember I looked at myself and said, oh, like I'm not even close to doing what essentially I already know is absolutely bare minimum level of human activity. And the lecture starts with like, why do people who do bare minimum today consider themselves to be active or sporty? And that was 20 years ago. And now it's much worse for the vast majority of the population. That was the first lecture. And I remember the first trials coming out at that time from Norway and then the beginning in the United States, I think at Harvard University, where people with fresh diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, 80% of people who were typically prescribed with prescription medicines or with insulin could be cured essentially, or they do not allow the disease to progress or develop at all, only with lifestyle intervention, with basic movement, optimization to the nutrition, and some weightlifting. That was massive at the time where everyone, and what I could read in medical literature at that time was how many more millions we need to put our insulin. It's like that's this mismatch, I think, between the symptoms and the causes. But how did you end up in that space? What was your journey?
So the six principles I actually came up last year because I wanted to write a book talking about merging ancient wisdom with modern technology to promote health and longevity. So my publisher, he actually asked me a question at the beginning saying, if you want to write this book, you want to teach people something, and you can teach them 5 or 6 principles. What are those? So that's how I started thinking. And even 20 years ago, when I started my practice in Boston, I always wanted to promote early prevention. And early prevention is one of the 6 principles I wrote in the book. Because I realized, even though I've been trying to teach people you need to do early prevention for the past 20 years, most people, I would say 90% of people, they will still wait until their symptoms are so bad.
Yeah.
They really never think about early prevention. I keep telling them, why don't you do this earlier? I think a lot of people, they have this illusion. They think they don't have to take action early. They can wait until it's so bad and then they think the Western medicine always has something that can solve their problem. I don't know
But it
why they
doesn't.
think that way.
It doesn't even have the options to treat the symptoms quite often in the first place, not just the problems. There's hardly any disease that we can treat a root problem of. And
Exactly. Because
antibiotics,
we're not really treating, I think antibiotic is the
yeah,
only, I would say the antibiotic is the best medicine we've ever had in Western medicine
yes,
because that solved a lot of problems like tuberculosis, infections.
yeah.
Otherwise, people die of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, unless people choose to have them prescribed for viral infections, which is absurd, but that's a different story. But what else apart from antibiotics? Pretty much,
I really
pretty
cannot
much
think of
any other
anything else.
treatment. Yes, exactly, is for
Exactly.
management of symptoms.
One of the six principles is early prevention, and the
Mm.
second one is treating the root cause,
Yeah,
which we don't do. And then the other four principles are you need to recognize your body type. You cannot use one size fits all. So you have to recognize your body's unique composition, constitution from birth, and your postnatal life, what's affecting your body's balance. Then you have
mm.
to address the imbalance in your particular body. You cannot just follow, oh, this guy, he had diabetes and he used this treatment and it worked. Or even this person who had Parkinson's, he used a stem cell treatment and it really worked for him, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you, right?
Yeah,
Because
of course.
everybody's different. And then you also need to treat your body like a garden, not like a machine. Just like a lot of people, they think, oh, if my shoulder, my knee, eventually it doesn't work, I'm going to have joint replacement. But then the replaced part always don't work as well as your
Yeah,
original part. So why don't
yeah.
you preserve your original part early on before even the symptoms are so bad? And then from there, we want to combine all the holistic treatment as a whole in the right proportion to treat the whole body. So it's not like you just use one single treatment. Not even one stem cell treatment is a magic bullet to fix anything. You have to combine the stem cell with all the other approaches together
Yeah.
to make your body have the environment for whatever treatment is working to make the effect in your body. Otherwise, none of the treatment will last, right?
So
Yes,
you
yeah.
mentioned using stem cells previously. We've been talking about this in a disease context. And then you mentioned a few minutes ago that you have also used it for longevity and just
Yes.
and aging. So when it comes to knowing how the stem cell therapy might be effective in a disease, you can see how the changes in symptoms or even other tests and markers of that disease can change over time, still personalized to that patient. But for aging, what does that look or feel like, and how would you measure the effectiveness of stem cell therapy on aging?
Mm.
Right now, we have all these different people developing aging related markers, right? Test your
Mhm.
biological age versus your chronological age, all these things. But
Yes,
I never take
telomere,
any of
telomere,
these
yeah.
tests myself. I'm more into you feel your body's rhythm, your body's balance. That's actually another principle. The last principle we didn't talk about. We talked about five principles. So one of the six principles is to follow your body's natural rhythm. So you need to be in tune to your body and then listen to your body. When you have any pain or any minor symptoms, that's your body telling you you need to address it. So that's the
Mm.
real early prevention. I don't have a lot of problems myself. I don't have any serious condition, but I do have a ACL tear in one of my knee. But it was
Mhm.
probably was developed over the past 12 years. I
Mm.
injured that knee multiple times. And then finally I did the MRI about 3 years ago and they say it's a complete ACL tear. But I never had any surgery. So basically 3 years ago, after that MRI, I injected myself into that knee 3 times in 1 year. And
Mhm.
after that, I did another MRI. Of course, it still says I have complete ACL tear, but I basically did not feel a lot of the knee instability I was feeling
Mm.
before I started the treatment with the stem cell.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then after that, I didn't need any treatment for my knee for about 3 years. And just maybe about 3 months ago, I started feeling very, very minor pain when I was going up a ladder to fix something. So again, this is my early prevention principle, and I wanted to do as early as possible. So I did another injection myself, and now I don't have that pain going up the ladder.
Yeah.
So my purpose is maybe I can be an experimental subject. So by the time I'm, say, 80 or 90 years old, since I will keep doing this for the next 30 years, then by that time people will realize, oh, this really works. But right now I can only tell you I like doing it myself, maybe every 4 to 6 months with the intravenous infusion. And for my joint problem, if I have minor pain, I would treat it really early so that I don't want it to develop into any osteoarthritis down the road. But of course, I don't have proof because I'm not 70 years old. Yeah, so I cannot tell people, look, 40 years ago I had this and I've been doing this and then I don't have any. But again, I can do all the activities. I can do hiking. I can hike Kilimanjaro, no problem. So I guess, it's working, right? And the other aspect of anti-aging, I feel, with this type of treatment, because I don't have a lot of problems. So that goes again to, I think these type of cells, they really regulate the immune system. So for our body to function correctly, a lot of things have to do. The immune system has to be functioning correctly, eradicating the cancer cells or aged, dying cells, to eradicate the junk from our body. And then also at the same time, need to stimulate the regeneration in your body, and also making your immune system not overreacting to any tissues inside your body attacking your own body. I'm also doing that for that purpose. So I guess, I don't have any proof saying it's really working or not working, but I do feel pretty well. And I feel it really helps me in some minor instances when I had some minor cold coming on. When I happened to do the stem cell infusion, then the cold never really developed into full-blown condition, because I know my body, I usually, once I catch cold or virus, I would have a prolonged period, full-blown symptoms for at least a week. But when I did the stem cell infusion, somehow it just didn't develop into the full-blown one. That happened maybe about 2 or 3 times. So, would you say it's really working? It's very difficult to say that's exactly the reason, right? But then on the other hand, one time I also had the herpes developing on my lip, was also in the early stage. And then it happened that day I did the stem cell intravenous infusion, and then that didn't develop into full blown as it usually does. So I think that's why, from my own experience, I feel it does do things to your immune system. And then for my mom's condition, I started the first treatment with stem cell for her. It was also somewhat related to inflammation in her leg that cannot resolve by itself with a lot of other treatment we tried. So it really helps reduce the inflammation. So if you think aging is related to stem cell exhaustion because your body cannot regenerate as well, and then this imbalance between regeneration and the requirement for the regeneration causes a deficit in your body not being able to repair itself efficiently, then it causes a chronic inflammation. That's the hallmark, one of the hallmarks of aging. So if the stem cell treatment can really reduce the chronic inflammation, which is a lot of anti-aging or longevity treatments are aiming for, then I feel this really can treat the root cause of aging related degenerative conditions. So that's the other reason why I think this is something I'm willing to participate and also try it on myself to see what happens 30 years down the road.
Yeah, that's an ambitious project. And I think that, well, hopefully there will be someone, or there'll be a research community that would be able to take this from beyond the anecdotal into the more systematic space. I mean, those are not easy things, nor quickly subjects to study, but I'm sure that we can, or we will, eventually look a little bit more as more treatments become approved and as more we learn about the function of it. I would like to just very briefly still stay on the topic of symptoms. I have 3 children, 2 teenage boys, and one of them wanted to be, well, was going through his athletic stage. He was going to boxing clubs and believing that he can punch other people in the face and not get punched himself. And every time he was hit in the head, which is probably what contributed to this way of thinking, was that, oh, the reason I got punched is because I have the wrong type of gloves, or I'm wearing the wrong type of shoes. Or if I'm going to have those shoes because that person has them, then it will make me run faster, right? But it's the same principle where you observe a symptom and then you believe that by replicating that symptom, you will be able to replicate the success that someone else has had with that. And there are multiple other examples like this stemming everywhere. And there are a lot of things that medicine actually can teach you about life, because you start recognizing these patterns of symptoms obsession across the society. It's everywhere. So my question to you
Yes.
is, what did you, because that transition from or training in what we called Western medicine, this evidence-based approach, is effective but relatively new. And there are thousands of much older historical interventions across different cultures where some of the methods were also effective across millennia, although never studied or researched. But my question is there something that you have learned during that transition that applies outside of the medical world as well?
Yes, definitely. I also co-authored another book recently. It's called Women of Wealth, and it's actually based on biblical proverbs. So they take proverbs out of the Bible, and then
Mm-hmm.
each chapter we write something life story and teaching you something in life based on the proverb. So I wrote one chapter out of 15 chapters in that book.
Mm-hmm.
And my proverb is Proverbs 31. And Proverbs
Okay.
31 actually basically talks about this woman provides for her family, but also serves her husband. When people talk about Proverbs 31, they would say, oh, the women needs to be subordinate to their husband, to serve their husband. That's what the Proverbs 31 talks about. It all depends on how people interpret it. But the chapter I wrote actually is talking about, based on the Proverbs 31,
Mm-hmm.
it talks about you need to find the meaning in your life. And then I recently
Yeah.
also talked to the publisher of this book on the podcast, and we talked about the principles I talked about for health and longevity.
Yeah.
Actually, all of them can apply to your career, to your daily life, not just about health. It can be about your success, your career, because like you talked about, we live in this capitalistic commercialized world, so everybody is trying
Yeah.
to come up with something to sell to make
Yeah.
money.
Mm.
Including stem cell treatment, because it's something that has the powers in some conditions. Then people start, there are bad actors who start using it to profit from it, but they're not really offering the real treatment, and they get the stem cell from the black market. That's why it became bad stories, bad experience for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, even for sales, for skills, you need to recognize your body's uniqueness. So everybody is born with certain talent. So if this group of people, they're very good at selling things to people, that doesn't mean you are that part of that group. You may be very good at being an athlete, but you're not good at selling things, right? So you need to
Exactly.
discover your own body's talent. That's
Yeah.
exactly the same as recognize your body's uniqueness and constitution to treat your body's imbalance.
Oh,
Because
this is
once
such a
you
massive
realize
problem.
your
Mm.
body's strength and weakness, you need to address your weakness and moderate your strengths, and then you need to take advantage of your
Yeah,
strengths. That's how you can succeed in your life, right?
I completely agree with you. And this is a bane of this is what I've seen in the corporate world a lot. In a big organization or a corporation, the only thing that the corporation cares about is to fit people into boxes of defined skills so that they can be replaced when they leave or where they get sick or when they need to fire them. And a lot of people believe that they can just learn anything by replicating the symptoms of successful people. If this is not your thing, you'll never be good at that. I remember when I was younger, I really admired people who could play piano. And and it took me a while to understand that there's no amount of practice that I will ever be able to put in that will even get me close to the level of the people who are born with a certain talent, predisposition, interest, and skill to do this. As my
Exactly.
hearing's probably not in a place, my brain doesn't process the information as it should. And yes, I can improve with training, but I will never be the world's top 10%, even. Never.
Exactly. When I grew up, my parents actually wanted me to play the violin. And then my finger is not even like this finger is too short. So it will never make me be able to play the violin very well. But they,
Yeah.
you know. So then on the other hand, I also discovered when I was a child, because my father was a very good badminton player in China. So he wanted to train me to play badminton when I was 3 years old. But then
Mm.
I was never able to play the badminton very well because my
Yeah.
brain somehow is not wired to do that, even though my father was very good at it.
I think it's also important that you said this physical awareness too, and in determining not just what your own self-awareness and what your strengths might be, but if we come back to how people might, especially now, might be constantly battling internally with their own interpretations of their own symptoms for things, whether those are physical or mental. Do you think people have lost touch with their own bodies? And for people, for a majority of the world who are, yeah, obsessed with symptoms.
Yes, I definitely agree with that because I think a lot of unhappiness, anxiety, depression people have, it stems from that they don't recognize their own body's uniqueness. They always try to compare themselves to other people around them. So
Mhm.
nowadays we have all these social media influence, all these things. So people constantly compare themselves to people on social media, and then they think they don't have as good image as those people on social media. They don't have as much money. They don't have as successful as them.
Yeah.
That's what creates unhappiness, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
what takes attention away. And by the way, lack of
Exactly.
attention that you've mentioned, anxiety, depression, and other things you've mentioned, those are also symptoms.
For me, from my teenage years, I studied Taoism, which is the philosophical foundation for traditional Chinese medicine and a lot
Mhm.
of ancient practices. And in Taoism, they always teach you first, you need to recognize your own body's uniqueness. And you need to make your body follow your natural flow around your body. Don't try to
Yeah.
force things, don't try to swim against the current. And you need to find the right time to do the right thing. And also, you don't want to burden your body with a lot of noise around you.
Yeah.
So that's
Mm.
exactly what people were talking about even 5,000 or 10,000 years ago. But we basically forgot about all these things. And we're
Yeah.
so concentrated on our
Yeah.
daily, like focusing on doing 10,000 steps or doing this lab test, trying to show my biological age is 20 years younger than my chronological age. And
Yeah.
these things are all like things that are part of our modern society, but they are actually the ones
Yeah.
that can cause anxiety, depression, and mental
Yeah. And then you
stress.
Exactly.
still die of a heart
Exactly.
attack because you were sitting at the desk at the chronological age of 11, right? Like if it mattered. Like if I remember when I was in school, I was always wondering why is it that there are certain books or topics that I read and they just stick. I just learn. It's easy, it's fast and quick. I will do more, I will learn more, I explore more. And there are other topics and areas or subjects or I just have zero interest in. It's just not my thing. I don't understand it. I don't know what people are talking about. And there is no amount of time I will be able to put into this to ever be among the best. Yet when I look around my peers sometimes or my colleagues, everybody tries to, oh, I want to be this person. I want to be that. Well, quite often the truth is you can't because you're not. And trying to
Exactly.
live someone else's life, I think this is one of the single biggest challenges that our clients face as well and patients. This is a massive problem. So I'm very happy for you
Yeah.
to bring that
So
up.
basically, we
Yeah.
need to discover our own body's uniqueness and then
Yeah.
try to pursue the passion that's suitable to our particular
Yeah.
person. Then that's how we can flourish, because it doesn't matter whether you are just being somebody doing maintenance of a building, or you're a scientist, rocket scientist, or you're a surgeon. You have to find the things you're very good at and then you flourish. Then
Yeah.
that's where you find your happiness and meaning in life.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Through that type of a pursuit and discovery.
And your book that's being launched later this year, is that really the key message that's coming out of your book, The Regeneration Effect?
The book Generation Effect, that book talks about these 6 principles we already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then it has more detail in stories, trying to teach the principles through the stories.
I hope when people can take those six and use it and do exactly what you just illustrated is don't swim upstream and accept the strengths and weaknesses you have. Listen to your own body, go with the flow, and then you thrive that way, right? It sounds like that's really
Exactly.
the underlying thing. And whether you choose to walk or swim or stem cells or whatever it is that you do,
Exactly.
it's about maintaining
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Like I told you, initially I didn't even have the 6 principles in mind. I just thought I want to write something because I think people really don't understand the difference between what I'm telling them versus what they hear from other people. So I want to make
Mm.
myself really different. So I want to
Mm-hmm.
try to tell them, okay, what I teach you is actually about merging the ancient principles with the modern technology. So I'm not just telling you, oh, the
Yeah.
ancient practice will fix everything, or the modern
Sure.
technology will fix everything. You have to merge them together and they actually work together. And then on the other
Yeah.
hand, you want to boil down, even though it's only 6 principles, you have to make it very easy for people to understand, and then they can grab on and then they remember it. So I made these 6 pamphlets because it's much easier for people to just look at these pamphlets rather than look at a 400-page book.
Mm.
So that's the other thing. So for your listeners, if they want to get the free copy of the fourth principle, tend your body like a garden, they can actually go to gift.regenerationeffect.com.
Great.
Super.
Yeah. So for our listeners, if they're listening, they have our podcast. If they want to read, because there are still people who do, they can have the book. And for those who are more visual, we have the pamphlets. Where can people find them? How can people pre-order or order your work?
So if they want to pre-order the big book, they can go to book.regenerationeffect.com. And if they want to order the abridged version that has all the 6 principles, I can also send you the link. They can order on Amazon.
So, Yi, we have a tradition here on the Solutions Manual podcast where a previous guest will ask a question to our next guest, not knowing who you are or what the topic is. And then you will be able to send your question into the Solutions Manual universe for the next guest.
Oh,
Yeah. So
okay.
you'll get your revenge essentially.
Okay.
Yes.
All
Yes. And
right.
so
Are you ready for your question?
Yes.
Okay, the question is, what does food mean to you? How does it show up in your life?
Okay. So there's a saying in Chinese, since I grew up, my grandmother always tells me, human body is iron, uh, and the food is the steel. It's this is the literal translation. But when my grandmother or my parents told me that back then, they were telling me you need to eat nutritious food because your body needs the food. So now I'm 50, so I realized, yeah, human body need the food to survive, but food is not the only thing human body needs. And also moderation in food, because we have the abundance of food now in Western society. We're now short of food. We don't have any starvation or famine, but the kind of food we need to eat actually is the very important thing. And also our schedule of eating and how we choose the food to suit our body. Again, it goes to the principle that you need to recognize your body, because not everybody should eat the same kind of food because your body type is different.
Yeah. Yeah. Great answer. So, where can people find you and work with you?
So because I talk about you need to recognize your body's constitution. So a lot of people in the past, they were asking me, how do I recognize my body's constitution? So that actually you need somebody who's experienced in recognize your body type, all these things. So I think that's part of what you guys do too, right? You teach them what's the right thing for them to do for their own body. So I actually offer 15-minute complimentary consultation with anybody who's interested in doing that. Then from there, we can move on if they want to do a full consultation as a paid service. And then from there, if they really believe what I told them help them and they want to go on even to a higher level of treatment, then that's after the consultation. If they are looking into stem cell related information, they can go to stemcelltherapyexperts.com. And if they are interested in learning about regeneration effect, which is mostly about anything related to ancient practice and modern technology in health and longevity, then they can go to regenerationeffect.com. So I actually have 2 podcasts on each website. One is solely talking about stem cell, the other one talking about anything related to health and longevity, any topic.
Super. And are you also on social media?
Yes, they can go to Stem Cell Therapy Experts for stem cell related thing on Instagram and Facebook and even TikTok. And then the YouTube channel is also called Stem Cell Therapy Experts. And then the Regeneration Effect is called Regeneration Effect on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. YouTube.
So you're everywhere essentially. All right, that's fantastic.
Yes.
So we will link for everyone who's interested to the notes on our podcast, so people will be able to click and find you through their preferred channel. It was a pleasure to have you on our podcast today. It's an amazing conversation. I really like how you balance the ancient with the modern and the Eastern with the West as well. I fully agree with you that the right balance is what gets us where we need to be in life. And practitioners who can combine the best of both worlds are probably the practitioners we need the most. So it's a real pleasure to host you here today. And I hope we'll meet again soon, maybe in your new studio.
So
Well,
very
thank you,
nice
Yi.
talking to you guys, and I hope we'll see each other in the near future. You're all welcome to come to Colombia.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Solutions Manual podcast. Please subscribe, like, leave a comment, or share with your favorite brain.